This video is brought to you by Tall Man Toys and Comics. Guys, I love the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And that's not even an exaggeration. I love these guys. From comic books to their cartoons to, of course, their movies. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were a big part of my childhood. I mean, they are right up there next to Batman, Spider-Man, Superman as one of the most iconic superheroes of all time. So today, I'm gonna rank the theatrical movies today, from worst to best. The only rule that it has is that it can't be the straight to DVD or streaming movies like Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or Turtles Forever. I'm only doing the theatrical movies. Now, if you do or do not like these movies, that is completely fine. Just understand that this is my personal opinion. With that said, here is my ranking from worst to best of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies. Let's start out with the worst with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3: Turtles in Time. I can safely agree to everyone that TMNT Turtles in Time is the worst Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. I mean, this movie was made at a time when Hollywood was seen as a joke, which makes sense when you think about it. And while Turtles in Time is not the worst movie ever made or even the worst movies of the 90s, it is the worst Turtles movie in general. This movie lacks the heart and humor of these characters. The story is completely contrived and confusing and hard to follow, and is just your basic time travel story with nothing new. The puppetry on the Turtles and Splinter look very uncanny and cheap. Even the action was kind of boring. I wasn't really invested in anything. The action just wasn't engaging. I understand this was the 1990s and I wasn't expecting much, but even the first two Ninja Turtle movies, which I like by the way, and we're going to get to those in a little bit, have more effort and have better action than this movie does. The only tolerable or at least positive thing I could say about this movie is that it could have been a lot worse. Next in line is TMNT 2007. Now, I want to make one thing perfectly clear that TMNT is not a bad movie, but it is pretty forgettable. Though I do have a softer spot for this movie just because it was the first TMNT thing that I was ever introduced to. This was also at a time when 80s nostalgia was starting to be popular. Soon, every other property from the 80s was starting to come back, so of course we got another TMNT movie. And as a TMNT film on its own, it's not bad, but it is pretty standard. The story is sort of a get the band back together sort of story with nothing new added. And the characters aren't just that fully developed. Even the villains aren't that fun in this. I just didn't feel any engagement in watching this film. With that said, there are some impressive stuff like the animation. While dated, it looks pretty good for the time. The soundtrack is decent for the most part, and I do like some of the action scenes. It's just the story and characters is what makes it fall apart. Overall, I don't find it as bad as the third movie, and it's not really a bad film, but it is more generically bad than it is just plain bad. I do feel bad for this movie because this was supposed to be the part of a trilogy, but that was not going to happen. Now, when it comes to this version of the Turtles, while it's not really a good movie, what makes it better than the 2007 film is that it is kind of a unique kind of bad, in that this is kind of a so bad it's good. Okay, maybe not really a so bad it's good, but kind of a so bad it's so uniquely bad, like you just want to poke fun of how bad everything is. But that's not to say this is a good movie. It is a very generic action film. While there is some cool action scenes, and yeah, some of the Turtles designs aren't that bad, the faces on the Turtles look very uncanny and kind of uncomfortable. I could not stand the direction in this movie. That's the worst part about it. The direction was so bad, I couldn't tell what was going on half of the time. Look, I don't hate Michael Bay or Jonathan Liebsman. They are good filmmakers on their own, but putting them both together did not seem to work out well. The editing and the pacing in this is just so bad, it makes the direction look even worse. At least with the Transformers movies, which my only problem with the Transformers movies and the action in that is that they were a little too cartoony. Here, the camera is always moving, there's so many flashes and so much, you can't even tell what's going on half of the time. So yeah, not terrible, but definitely not great. Though I would take it something as crazy and insane as this film over the 2000 film, which was just mediocre. This is just a unique kind of bad. Next on the list is Out of the Shadows. Out of the Shadows, to me, is probably the most middling of the TMNT movies. It has a little going for it, and there are some good ideas, but it just felt like a generic action film. The tone is all way too all over the place, like it's trying to be both the cartoon and the first movie with how dark it's trying to be. And Crane's design looks but ugly, man. It is terrifying. But with that said, the action is better than the first movie. Like, I'm able to see everything and the camera's not always moving around so much. The actors are trying, and while the tone is all over the place, this movie does feel like the cartoon, even when it's trying to be dark at times. So while I don't think it's great or debatably objectively good, it is the better, or at least bad, of the TMNT movies. I can actually only recommend this one straight up for the fans, just because it actually feels like the cartoon half of the time. So if you're just someone who hasn't seen the other Turtle media, you probably won't dig this out, but if you're a fan of the cartoons, you'll probably like this one fine. Now, this was supposed to be a part of a trilogy from what Michael Bay said, but judging by how this movie performed, it was likely that it won't happen. So if you're a fan, go check it out. If not, then this is definitely a skip. Next on the list is The Secret of the Ooze, the sequel to the 1990 film. Okay, now we're getting to the good stuff. The Secret of the Ooze may just be a typical 90s cheesy flick, but when you look at it as a TMNT film, it works pretty well. For starters, as a TMNT movie, the story is really engaging. I just love watching these turtles interact with each other. They have good chemistry, they have good storylines and plot points. Shredder, while yeah, he's a little more kid-friendly in this one, they use him pretty well in this, and I do like those goofy sidekicks, even if they're no Bebop and Rocksteady. This movie and the first one are the perfect examples of how to do a movie based on a cartoon. The movie does have a comedic tone, unlike the first movie where it tried to balance both. But unlike Out of the Shadows, does stick with that cartoony, kid-friendly tone despite having some dark moments. My only problem with Secret of the Ooze was the pacing. I think it is a little too fast-paced and we don't get a lot of development from most of the side characters, but that's just me. Though if there's two things I will remember from The Secret of the Ooze, is the Vanilla Ice song and the intro. If you just want to see a kid-friendly action film, The Secret of the Ooze will do you justice. Or for even a TMNT fan, go definitely check this one out. Next on the list is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from 1990. Guys, let's be real. The 1990 film is the superior live-action version. It has everything that a TMNT fan would want. The movie perfectly balances the dark tone and the comedy perfectly. The movie also has a strong emotional core between Splinter and the Turtles. The effects on the Turtles are just pitch perfect. It looks exactly like they did in the cartoon. And while the action is pretty dated, it is pretty good for the time. What else can I say about this movie? It's just so good. This is the perfect definition of how to make a movie based on a comic or a cartoon. If you're a fan of the comics or the cartoon, this is definitely a watch, even for someone who just likes to watch movies in general. I still highly recommend it. And my favorite TMNT movie is Mutant Mayhem. Yes, guys, Mutant Mayhem is now my favorite TMNT film. What makes this version different or better than any other TMNT film is the animation. It looks freaking awesome, and while yeah, it is taking a little bit from Spider-Verse, which you could argue it is a ripoff, it works well on its own. The action is very fast-paced and very well done. The characters, while the Turtles are a little bit younger than most other incarnations, it is fresh to see them with a different point of view. I really like the story in this. It's very engaging and very fun to watch. Even the villain is awesome. I love Ice Cube as Superfly. I think he was the perfect choice to play him. And the most important thing that this movie has that any other TMNT film doesn't was personality. It has its own identity and it knows what it wants to be. As I am recording this, the movie is still out in theaters, and if you haven't seen it yet, go check it out. I definitely will think you'll have a great time with it. And that's why Mutant Mayhem is my favorite TMNT film. And that is my ranking on the TMNT movies. Let me ask you guys, what is your favorite TMNT film? I'm kinda curious. Please comment below and let me know. See you guys.